Great, thank you. So we have a packed agenda today, and but I think we can move it pretty quickly. What I think we need to start with those minutes, right? So has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? They were very complicated minutes, so hopefully if anybody has any changes, they've thought about them. No changes? Okay, so we can put them on file. Those will come back in the latter part of our conversation when we start talking a little bit about the goals for CAPC this year. I think we should probably be reflecting upon the meeting with Eversource and our conversation around the zoning and bylaws. So the first thing that I wanted to do today is really just kind of go through a brief overview, update on some of the things that have been happening behind the scenes with KLA. I'm trying to find my agenda now and I can't find it. Thank you. So there's several items that we've had moving forward with KLA. So as you guys know, when we talked last time, KLA's consultants, they put together a core group of people to work on very specific discrete initiatives over the course of the past 4 weeks. Asked for a very quick turnaround. I think Cecilia can attest to that. On a number of things in order for them to hit their milestones for us to move forward with the plan. And so there's been a few fronts that they've been working on in that regard. So the first thing is with respect to the greenhouse gas inventory. So they've been doing a very deep dive on that and updating our numbers. I think we may be able to get them to come here and walk us through their work at the June meeting. So that would get us a nice firm baseline, help us understand what the business as usual for our carbon output will be between now and 2050 if we don't do anything. Like what is going to happen if we do nothing? And then can start working through some of the individual actions and what those impacts would be for the climate action plan. Nick, you emailed me some thoughts on what you'd seen in the initial draft of the data that KLA has been working through. You'd mentioned that you felt it was more accurate, or they're finding some things that we didn't necessarily have layered in an original approach. Is that what you had said? Am I misstating what you said?
I think that's
Can you put me on the spot?
no, I think that's generally what I said. I thought they were doing it. You know, we probably at 85 or 90%, and they were drilling in and answering some of the harder questions and getting to some of the things.
Great. Okay. So they are still working on that. I didn't think it was necessarily probably the best timing for us to bring it here yet. But
Yeah, because there's still some things that he's drilling into.
Right. So that's probably going to be our June meeting, which is actually just in a few weeks. I think it's not going to pull 4 weeks between these meetings this time. So we'll get that confirmed and added to the agenda next time. The other thing that they're working on, and I emailed you all on this, and I wanted to see if you had any questions about it, is the advisory group. So on the advisory group, what they had asked for was a group that kind of fits several different parameters. One is they want cross-sectional, right? So very similar to the working groups that we did in October, they want a wide representation, and ideally outside of the choir. So people who are not the regulars at some of these meetings. That was one. And then the other is the town staff. And so actually a lot of the town staff was already involved in the working groups, and they're being asked to come back in these advisory groups. What the plan is for KLA to lead 3 separate meetings with this advisory group. And this will be started off on June 13th, which is coming up as well, Tuesday. The approach they have is they're going to start off with, the overview of the greenhouse gas inventory, the business as usual, and then they're going to start to get into some high level prioritization activities. So they've got a set of activities that they currently lead all towns through that they think is a good way to get consensus around, how aggressive do you want to lean in on some of these things? Are you a leader? Are you a follower? Are you first fast follower, those types of things. Where the areas that people feel they really have momentum already and can be built on, where are things that we need to maybe catch up on. So that's going to be the principal first meeting, and then they're going to dive deep into each of the work streams in the subsequent meetings. So the second meeting will probably be in July, and then the third meeting will probably be in September, shortly before they wrap up the work that they're doing on the climate action plan. Any questions about the advisory groups?
Does it have to be July and August?
July and September. July and September. July is going to be tough. We let them know July is going to be tough. But that's apparently the cadence that they need to work at.
So looking at this, at the advisory group, I would have had a couple of thoughts. One is to go back to Reg Foster and ask him if there's an alternate to him, somebody
Okay.
else
That's a good idea.
who could be representative of the housing authority. Reg has a lot on his plate right now,
Yep.
and I think we might benefit by kind of spreading some of that work around.
Good suggestion.
Okay, the other piece that I'm worried about here is I might want to say, is there somebody that we can add to this list who counts as not a true believer? It feels to me, when I read through the same, like there's a lot of known suspects here.
Mhm.
And so a lot of potential to get people who are already on board with this. And I just would like us to think for a moment about somebody who might ask some questions from a different angle.
Okay.
So not necessarily a completely opposed person, but I just
Yes.
want somebody a little bit outside the usual suspect box.
Agreed.
Okay,
One other thing that's not yet represented, not yet confirmed on the group, is I'm trying to get somebody from the finance committee as well. Because I think they'll be asking very pointed questions on a number of the individual actions. So I'll continue to follow up there to see if we catch somebody. And if you have any suggestions for somebody who could be that good foil, we could probably still get them on.
okay. Let me think about that for a moment.
Okay. So that's the advisory groups, and I think the invites, you said we had a room reserved here?
Yes, no, it'll be at the public safety building. It's the community room there.
Oh, I've never been there.
Yeah, so if you go in the front entrance, you can
Yeah.
have it, you walk in.
Okay. And how large is it again? Do you know what the seating is?
It's a great size.
It's bigger than
Is it
this.
bigger than this?
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
have like groups of tables and a projector. It's a perfect room for this.
Okay, good. Because I
Public
heard back,
safety building?
yeah, I heard back from Olin and they said they'd be willing to
Yeah.
offer space as well, but if you feel like we've already got it, I'll just
Yeah,
decline
yeah.
the invitation.
Set it up so we're all good.
Okay, good. So public safety,
It is a busy night in town. Every other facility I tried was booked.
because every committee and board is trying to get their last meeting in before people disappear for the summer.
And that's the select board meeting.
There's a select board meeting that
On which night? On the
13th.
June 13th?
Yeah.
There is,
All right.
yeah.
So the timing of this meeting will be 4 PM to 6 PM. So a little bit on the earlier side. So any questions on the advisory groups?
What is, oh, yeah, I guess just at the end of September, that will,
That's
that's sort
wrap
of
up.
there.
That's where
Okay.
we're literally moving into that draft of the climate action plan.
And what will that group have achieved? Just being able to question.
Those advisors, so yeah, so they'll be, think of this as sort of the inside game, and then there's a separate outside game that we're gonna start working as well. The inside game is trying to get people who are, especially the town staff, who are gonna be responsible for potentially implementing some of the actions. And then a cross section of the community who can kind of raise the concerns and what the barriers might be. So that can get layered into the draft. But there's also a community engagement component that KLA is gonna be working on this, and that's where potentially we could have some more public meetings with, open to the public. What is climate action plan? How does it work? What's the process that we're gonna go through between now and the end of the year? So that people feel as if this is not just out of thin air. So the other thing that KLA has been working on is, they had a branding team. And I sent you guys an email today, how many of you had a chance to see it?
I saw it. Didn't get a chance to-
So on the branding meeting, they broke it up into small chunks. They do these little tiny sprints. So chunk one was, what do you guys want to call yourself? Call the climate action plan, so to speak. And so their recommendation is to give it something that is easy to remember, that can start to be used on various campaigns over time. They gave us a brainstorming list. I sent you guys all the brainstorming list. We narrowed that down. We actually went in one direction. Got some feedback, went in a different direction. And so they asked us to nail it down because they wanted to move into logo and into the narrative. So we put the flag on the ground around, say, sustainable living. It was direct. It's not necessarily all that innovative, but if you look at a lot of the other towns that have done this, it's usually resilient this, sustainable that, et cetera. And so it does clearly state what the goal is of this plan. And so then they went through the logo tournament, which is a online tool that they use that basically it was a web-based
An app.
crowdsourced logos. So they put the RFP up online. All over the world, logo experts can decide to compete. And they submitted hundreds and hundreds of logos, which they whittled down to 6. And then they had Cecilia, Miles Tucker, Amy Helson, and myself vote on them and put comments on them. And then they narrowed it down to the 2 that you've now seen in your email. Yeah, let me see if I can bring that up. I probably have to share. Can I have sharing? Just do that. Branding logo. Share. Right. So let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on that. So these were the 2, and they have they've given a little bit of light additional feedback on these to the designers. This wraps up at 1 o'clock tomorrow. This is how their system works. You have to put a deadline on it, and then everything gets voted on. So these were the 2 that kind of made it through all of the rounds. And I'm not going to say anything because I'd like to hear what you guys think.
Want to go around the room?
Well, just give it a second just to look at it, absorb it, and then maybe go around the ring. Who wants to start? Ms. Leslie?
I like the one on the right, no, left with the red. There's a town hall that's a little more realistic, but I like the curve on the other one better. I think they're unique, they're nice, both of them. But I think having Needham Town Hall recognizable will help resonate.
I like that all the words are together
They're
on the left-hand side, yes.
Why?
Just because the sustainable, and then you gotta look down to meet them. I think it's cutesier, but I think this one feels more like, you know.
Yeah. All your left guy?
Just go left. No comment.
All right, no comment. You've already.
I've
you
already
can't
had
talk.
lots of comments.
Kevin.
That's definitely, the font's showing it chunks better. The graph images look better. On the right, sustainable is so kerned out, you need a sustainable, and you just don't get through it. I'd say the one on the left.
I like the color and the feeling of the one on the right. So if there's some way to bring something like some aspect of that to the left, because the one on the left, to me, she seems very cold and corporate. The one on the right, a little more happy,
What if I-
The
In
sun, we add
resilience.
the sun
Yeah.
from the right.
I told you, they told us already that there's not gonna be time for revisions and you had to pick one of these two, which would you say?
Meaning that is, we have to take what they give us. We have no option.
Well, not really. No,
Yeah.
there might be some additional minor tweaks, but let's say it's pretty close to final.
If I had to pick one, I'd pick the one on the right and move the letters together for sustainable. Just, it's only because I'd rather put something over to the left because it's very corporate and cold. That's the problem I have with the left. And we're looking for something that's bright and happy in future.
I was on the left.
You're on the left.
I was on the left. I might have voted for greener trees, but I was on the left.
Very much on the right.
Very much on the right.
Just think it's a happier.
Catherine,
Right.
you're the right.
Right is a little more.
That's
fun.
funny.
It's pretty
I
close.
was on the right.
Oh, really?
Consistently throughout.
Must be a, like
Is it a town?
But again,
it's the water, whatever water you guys are
yeah,
drinking.
yeah, but again, very, very clear is, design and so forth. The word sustainable is
Yeah.
spread out is a little bit of an issue, but. But again, it's the.
This is
feeling
good
I have.
feedback. I
Joe.
hear
It
right.
says
Oh,
Joe.
Oh, Joe, hey, Joe, what did you just say?
Yeah, I'd say very much on the left as well. I mean, that's New England, it's Needham. The one on the right could be any town in the United States. So I think just from a recognition standpoint, a simplicity standpoint, it doesn't need, it's very New England.
Well, again, we can take the town hall left and put it on the right, and all of a sudden.
I think there's probably, like, what we could do on the left is, we could pop the colors more. We could ask them to.
What if the
brighten
A
it a little.
Clean Future Together could be in green, so that just distinguishes?
Yeah. It might not read as well in any other application.
A
We're not
dark
using
green.
for- You could do dark green, but be careful of like how this would be seen online, on print.
Mhm.
I assume we'll, banners or something like that.
Yeah.
But
The other,
Kevin, you could get away with greening the trees, right?
Yes.
And that would not impact
You groom the
readability.
trees.
Add a sun.
maybe have the sun.
I don't need a
All right.
sign.
Well, again, like.
So our solar too.
Yeah, I get it.
That is all tied in.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, it's almost a cross.
right.
it's
And a
almost
windmill.
cross between-
We need a windmill, there needs to be an EV.
Right. And then clearly,
Good
Well,
one.
we have to take
Maybe
the
it's
electric
an
bikes
e-bike.
on the right and move
Yeah.
the electric bikes. The electric bikes on the right have to go on the left.
right, and how do we show geothermal?
All right.
Put it well,
This is good feedback.
put it well.
Thank you.
They're both great.
We'll-
Put it well.
uh,
Put it well, But it can't look like an oil well.
Cecile and I will try to figure out a way to distill this into actionable
Yeah.
back to our folks. So the other thing that they put together is kind of the pitch. Like when you think about, like, it might be on a brochure, it might be on a flyer, it might be on the website, or it might be the first few pages of the climate action plan. How do we want to talk about this? And this is going to be tougher to do. We went through at least 2 rounds on this language already. Mostly to strip out words. But let me know if you have any. Michelle.
So please explain, Steve, explain one more time. Where is this being used? Is there anything before this, or is this the introduction, the first thing people are reading? Is something know what's going on with this?
Yeah, this could be the first thing. It could be the first page of the climate action plan, or it could be the introduction to a presentation, or it could be on a flyer. And it doesn't necessarily have to be these exact words, but this is the narrative that they're trying to craft.
When we post on the climate action plan webpage, it'll be, this is the
This might be
focus
that.
of our climate action.
So let's give everybody like 2 minutes or so to read it. So we can go the opposite way, this time. I can start with Joe.
It's very word heavy for me. You know, I think that it could benefit from a little bit of editing down, just from the sake of simplicity of the message. It doesn't need to be long, kind of flowing sentences. That's just kind of my initial reaction.
Great. Any examples of where things really feel wordy for you?
I think I don't think you really need the second paragraph. I think if you just left it as the first paragraph and the last paragraph, I think it would sound pretty strong.
And then tighten those paragraphs up a little bit.
Yep, that would be my thinking.
Catherine, do you want to add anything?
It is a lot of words.
Yeah.
Takes a long time to read, and I'm not sure how many people will stop and read it and take it in.
Okay.
I always like bullets.
Bullets?
I think that it breaks down. Makes it easier to read, at least for me it does.
Mary Ann?
So I agree with ditching the second paragraph.
Yep.
It doesn't include our goal anywhere
Mhm.
to be,
Yeah.
you know, carbon neutral by 2050. So we're good to work that in. And it struck me what is it? It's smart choices and smarter decisions. They like the adjective smart.
Too much smart.
It was too much smart, and especially if we put those right next to each other, kind of more. So at any rate.
Could be that.
I'm very similar, so many words, talking, you know, what is it, word salad as the phrase goes, or something to that effect. I think the beginning of it, in some ways, I almost look at the third paragraph and say, something like that is starting to be a good first paragraph. Again, where is the goal we're looking to accomplish, and this is how we're going to accomplish it. So there's too many words. We're not telling them what's going on. They have to find out what's going on. I think we need to tell them what's going on. And then this is how we're going to do it and why we need to do it. So again, it needs almost a rework, in my opinion.
You're the writer. Here comes the writer.
No. It's, there's a lot of words. I also think it borders on a lot of flattery.
Yeah.
And that I think people will see through. And just kind of be like, you guys are putting one over on it. And I also think it seems like we're doing it all by ourselves, and there's no time to either the goals, but also what the state is doing, the state goals, because that's some of legitimacy too. But yeah, just a little more direct.
All right. Cecilia, you've already seen this.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of echoing what other people say, it's really too long. You know, I would just get right into it, frankly, and just start at the beginning and say, this is our sustainable Needham's climate action plan as part of a statewide effort to do X. That's our goal. And then bullet the plan kind of as a second part. And that's it. I wouldn't embellish as much. You could probably cut this down to about 8 lines like that.
And then we're in this together at the
Yeah.
bottom. Yeah.
We're not together.
I forgot to mention that. The tagline that says, what's it say again?
A future, clean future together, something like that.
Yeah, so at one point we had the gerund building a clean future together, and then we tried changing that several times, and we're like, we couldn't settle on one, so then somebody said, well, why don't we just ditch it? And we were like, yeah, we'll ditch it. And then we ditched it, and then somebody said, and the best part about that is now when you come back and you do your EV show, you could do a variant of it that says driving a clean future together. Or when you do your building efficiency one, you can do building a clean future together, etc. Your tree
Trees.
canopy, growing
Growing a healthy community.
future together. And that was like kind of an epiphany.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice. You can see, almost see the campaign over the
We
years.
spend a lot of words, climate, environment.
Yeah, the health of the environment.
That's
Yeah.
climate.
There's still a political, sort of a political bend to climate,
Yeah.
and I think, there's gonna be a lot of people in town who right away, that just
Yeah.
says something, and focus on environment.
Exactly. I've always had an issue with why we're not focusing on the health of our air, we're breathing, water, soil and so forth. I mean, people can, feel that as tangible.
Rachel.
Yeah, I think where you're going is right. I think we have to figure out through some of the working groups, what is the reason we're doing this sort of emotionally? The first couple sentences could be the introduction to any plan for anything we're doing. I think when it started going into the stronger tomorrow, we're building our future, that those things still felt more emotional. I think we got to bring that up to the top. I actually like the last paragraph. I would use just that. I wouldn't even use these. I went, when the medium is a place where civic engagement thrives. I had that same like, oh, that's, are we self-congratulating? Like it just felt like and that could be for anything. So I think we have to be really specific. We have to understand kind of the emotional toll for most people in this town. What are the two things? Why are we doing this? We're doing this for future generations, or we're doing this, to leave healthier Needham in the future. Like, what are those 2 or 3 things that resonate with most people?
Yeah.
As well as we're doing it because we have to.
Yeah.
And so we can't lose that.
Yeah, we're doing it for today and tomorrow.
Great. Nick.
So I kind of like the words. I like that, you're putting it in the context, especially the opening sentence. They are kind of using New England buzzwords like prudent. And we can tighten it up a little bit. But I think as laying a base case to say, we're doing this climate action plan, not just for emotional reason, but because we're sort of skinflint New Englanders at heart, going back to 1711.
We could make prudent choices instead of smart choices.
We could make, yes.
And it's wicked cool, whatever it is. Wicked cool.
So they asked us for words, they asked all of us, like, what are the types of words that you think of when you think of Needham? I think I just walked out of town meeting at that point, so I was thinking very.
Verbose?
No, I would say, I said, we're very proud of our AAA bond rating, we're conservative, we don't make huge gambles, like a lot of that, and that's where I think prudent, smart kind of work their way in, not just from me, because it came from Amy, it came from you guys too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could debate that. I mean, do you think we need to be more aspirational? You're saying bring in more of the emotion.
Well, it's the right thing to do.
Well, I do think there's a place for prudent and smart.
Yeah.
In making this much more concise, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. It still works.
Is it
and
okay to
is
bring in a little bit
definitely the
more of
character
the-
of the town, so.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I think
it is,
we can be prudent and hopeful. Maybe that's the message to carry in this introductory.
Or
We're not
prudent
doom
and
and gloom.
aspirational.
Right.
You can hold both those things at the same time.
Right. We can believe that we can clean up the mess without
And
doing
because we're prudent, we
reckless
believe
things.
this.
Yeah.
Or we can make a difference.
Yeah, okay.
Action can make a difference.
So one other, just this comment, do we add something there? I mean, we have to do this. I mean, the Commonwealth says we have to do this. That's why we have a climate action plan. That's why we're all in the room together. So it's not like, we feel a certain way and that's why, we have a climate action plan. No, we have to have a climate action plan.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's out of prudence and having a plan, because we have to have a plan.
But I don't think as an introductory, this is introducing the plan, putting it in context, correct?
But
But
also,
not clear
What, I
where
guess,
this is
what
gonna
is
be
this
used
little
yet.
narrative doing?
So, yeah, so this is the first pass at this, and what they're planning to do is to take this narrative and create a communications toolkit that we could use in whatever context we want. So we're doing a tabling, at the, I don't know, Sudbury Farms or one of our farmers
Harvest
market,
fair,
harvest
yeah,
fair, farmers
Farmers
market.
market.
We have something that we can tell people and show them.
this is the elevator pitch.
This is the elevator pitch. I
So it
mean,
needs to be
whatever,
shorter.
and it
if
needs to
that's
feel
our
like something
pitch.
we could say.
There's about 20 different thoughts in here. I think we have to get it to like three concepts, right? Like whatever it is, we have to do it, we're doing it for together, for We've got to boil it down. There's too many ideas
And
here.
what we say, maybe the only thing people ever hear about this committee. Because they
So,
might not listen to third, fourth, fifth, you know.
So it's really, I mean, it's interesting thinking about this as an elevated pitch, because then it, we're conveying basically what we're doing, why it's important to you.
Right now, this
Which
is
is
very long.
a bit different than saying, we're prudent and cheerful, trustworthy, but great and reverent.
so as a complete foil to what they've begun working on, I just want to show what Newton's face of their climate action plan is now. So they came up with this tagline for our future. And it's 4 actions that can have enormous impact on climate. And this is their outreach. This is what they're doing for residents and businesses. Heard this, I joined a Chamber of Commerce, Charles River Chamber of Commerce meeting, and one of the sustainability managers in Newton talked about this. It's simple, because,
But I like the goal is right there, actually. That's
yeah,
also good.
nice goal. They've got they say 60% of the city's greenhouse gas comes from residential buildings and vehicles. There might be some more, I want to pull out some other things. But they talk about just 4 actions. 4 actions: weatherize the max, heat and cool smart, go solar, and green your transportation.
What I like is.
And that is the 80%.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. That's what the climate action plan is gonna end up pretty much saying. So I don't know if maybe this is behind the elevator pitch, but very effective.
It's simple. I mean, I think that's
What we didn't do in that introductory paragraph is tell people what the problem we're solving for, right? And that's what they did. They just put it right at the top. This is what the issue is. Here's how we're gonna deal with it.
I have to make a pitch for trees. Newton already has a tree bylaw. Needham does not.
Agreed.
Yeah, but that's not gonna make the top 4 actions.
I'm not suggesting it has to
Okay.
be. I'm suggesting possibly it could be, or some relationship to the environment.
I would make a slightly different argument for not including it. This is really what you're trying to direct towards the residents.
Yeah.
We could and should have a bylaw
Yeah,
for trees,
absolutely.
but residents aren't gonna.
Yeah,
like
no,
it.
absolutely correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so I do have a question for my parliamentary experts in the room. I've been very, very conservative on public meetings and trying to share some of these things in advance of these meetings and trying to avoid deliberation outside of these meetings. Does reviewing marketing copy count as deliberations, or should I go to the town council on that?
That's doing your homework.
To
What do
your
you mean in
homework.
terms of putting it out to people?
Well, not putting it out, but if we wanted to have a back and forth on the marketing copy, really, this is the only venue we should be doing that, I'm understanding.
That is a tricky one. Group edits are really not public. And the town doesn't have like a public forum that you can come on. Right, that would track who said what, that's the
Right.
challenge.
Right, because we don't have like a Google Docs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's certainly permitted for everybody to send feedback to one person,
But not have a back and forth.
but not have a back and forth.
So if I were to send this copy out and say, mark it up, send it back to me, nobody else,
Right.
and then I were the one who.
And I would
Produce the
recommend-
next version
Produce the
that
next version, go
became
back to
part
you
of the
or-
official record.
Right, and we could also, we could save those copies individually on our.
Yep,
On our
you can.
repository.
And I would recommend either I can be the
Conduit,
conduit since I'm not technically on the committee, but also then I BCC everyone, so there's no accidental reply all. Cause
Yes.
that happens all the time.
Yes, oh, yeah.
Reply all.
Oh, yeah, that happens. That definitely happens.
so I would love it if people had additional thoughts, or, let's say you get bored one night and you decide you want to write. It happens.
Oh, yeah. No, it's important. It's very
Yeah.
important. It's extremely important what the words are.
Yeah.
It's really important.
So if we could adopt that process where, send it to me and Cecilia.
Mhm.
If you have thoughts, you now have the copy in the email that I sent to you. Do not reply all, please. And then Cecilia, we should figure out how to capture that email that comes back, if it comes back in a public repository.
Yeah.
Maybe it's on the SharePoint page. Does that count, or SharePoint page?
Can it be, can we reply to you maybe in a Word doc? that
I don't even
Right.
think it needs to be on the SharePoint page, but it needs to be available if somebody requested it.
Okay, so
which
I
is
could
what
just
we do
save
with
it in
some other
folder in
things on the
case.
select board, yeah.
All right, because I don't like the feeling that this group's being cut out of a lot of these processes. But the reality is the cadence we're on doesn't allow us to wait for the next meeting to make
Keep
decisions.
going. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do that. Any other comments or questions about the branding and or the messaging?
Slightly related update, because we will be doing all of the communications toolkit. And I know Stephen and I have been talking a lot about updating our website. I am in the process of looking for an intern to help me do all of those updates. Specifically, I've gotten already quite a few applications,
Oh, great.
specifically people in some sort of tied-in field, so we really targeted environmental policy students and stuff like that. So
That's
hopefully
awesome.
they'll be able to help with a lot of this work, and my intent is, as long as I can keep finding the funding, even if it's during the school year, it's 10 hours a week instead of a full-time internship, any help that I can get for a lot of that administrative stuff.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And that should go a long way. So two other topics. One, just a quick one on the CEA. So we have been interviewing consultants for that, and there should be a decision made shortly. And then once that happens, we'll figure out what the next steps are. And
Well, what's the CA? in this?
I'm sorry, the municipal aggregation.
Oh, I'm thinking of council.
I know, we changed it to
Right.
Muniac, and I'm using the old term. So municipal aggregation, so we don't, yeah, Muniag, so we do not confuse it with the Council of Economic Advisors. But you guys made a note also of community aggregation, electrical aggregation. So as soon as we have that finalized, we'll hear that back from town manager's office. Then we will notify this group, and then there will likely be opportunities for anybody who wants to be involved with that.
And meanwhile, electricity prices are coming down.
Yes,
So this is a good thing.
this is a good thing. Yeah, what's it,
Yeah.
about 13, 14 cents a
That's
kilowatt
what I
hour
think I
now,
saw, 13.75 or something like that. Yeah.
plus the 23 cents just delivery charge, but we can't handle, can't change that.
Can you just briefly say what is being worked on for the municipal?
Oh,
aggregation?
we're close to selecting a consultant. And that's all I can say about that.
And then the next consultant will do.
So the
review
consultant-
contract.
Yeah, so there's a whole process that they go through the entire timeline. It'll begin with meeting with the town and trying to come up with high-level goals. So what do we want this to accomplish? What are the goals of municipal aggregation? There is a public process that the town has to run, and then there's a public process that goes through the DPU and the DOER.
Yeah.
They also solicit public comment. And then hopefully, DOER is with new management moving much faster on these
It's
than.
about 3 months. Between when they start, it's about 3 months.
Is it down to 3 months now?
I think, no, before it gets to the DPU.
Yes,
And then it's,
2
The
years.
DPU series has been 2 years,
2
but
years.
it looks like there's some attention at the state
Right,
governor and lieutenant governor level to make it shorter, which would be a good thing.
yes.
but before it goes to the DPU, I think there's a mandatory 1 month commentary period
Okay.
within Needham, so.
Okay, so the next thing is the survey, and I did send that out to everybody. Everybody had a chance to read that. I'm looking for comments, thoughts. Marianne, you had some thoughts on it. I'd love it if we could start with you, if you don't mind.
So, When I read the survey, I used a word that Stephen wrote me back and said, that's a very strong word. I said, I hate the survey. Part of it's the week. I'll give a lot of credit to this week. But I didn't understand what the goal was,
Right.
all right? So my question was, what are we trying to accomplish with this survey? What do we need for information? It was helpful. There was some, a response that came from KLA to some of the questions that I asked, where she sort of said, well, you know, some people break the survey up into 6 pieces and roll it out one a month. And I'm like, oh, well, it might make more sense to me if we were doing that with a goal of some information we were looking for, or something we were trying to set up with people. So it felt, again, like there was too much in one place and I couldn't figure out where it was going or why it was asking certain things. Part of it felt like we were leading the witness to the doomsday scenario, and I think that's not a good place to be. And then some of these "are you willing" questions. So to me, the part that I worry about with "are you willing," right, is, you know, here Artie keeps talking about our tree bylaw, but he's also the man who sells solar. So he will recall when he came to my house and we concluded the trees, we're not gonna actually support putting solar on my house. So was I willing to do solar? Sure. But the answer is I have very tall trees and we're not taking any of them down. So it didn't happen at our house. You know, so some of those questions I felt either needed some context. You know, the car question, are you willing to buy an EV? I wonder if the first question is, how many years until you think you will buy a new vehicle? You know, what's that timeline? When you buy a new vehicle, are you willing? You know, it felt like it needed some different staging because we're not turning to people today and saying you need to make this decision immediately, right? And the context sort of felt like it was missing. So
Yeah.
those were some of my initial thoughts. So I really wanted to understand where we were going, what we were trying to do with this data, and were we getting what we needed to know from it? And I was not clear.
Good, excellent. Any other thoughts?
My apologies, Steve, I didn't read through it,
Okay,
but I agree with surveys in general. What the questions are make a big difference. Is it, you know, the bias of, you know, what is going on. Basically
Oh.
what.
And I could say one other thing, just even in the preamble. Again, lots of words in the preamble, like I would put up a chart that made it clear, 80%, the pie chart, 80% of the emissions come from households in town, right? You know, just some very
Simple.
impactful things rather than the blah, 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 blah,
blah, blah,
blah.
blah. Excellent.
Agreed.
Kevin,
It's really long by question 10. It was starting
which
to
one was
go-
that? I can't, I don't
It
know
didn't
that.
matter.
It just, what's our biggest barrier to buying or leasing an EV as the next vehicle? It's like, and I get this is a rough, but it's sort of like this and quickly into the weeds. And, you know, willing, not willing. It seemed like one might need a slide bar or something like that, just sort of pitch your scale, like where are you between these two parameters? But sometimes it just was too hard. It's funny, I was looking at a Pew Research survey about stuff like this today. And they, you know, I refer to a lot of people call it renewable energy. They refer to it as alternative. And it's like alternative, that seems like it's still not even legitimate yet. But it's funny how I think the populace thinks this is still alternative, not renewable and not what we assume this is all, like everyone's with us. But this seemed very, a little bit really dense for people who aren't as plugged in on environmental stuff.
Okay.
And I could see them very quickly shanking off and just dropping the survey.
Too
So
dense.
it's too dense, and for people who aren't into it, you're asking a lot of questions. I don't know you're getting at.
Okay.
And you're gonna lose them, and then the only people you're gonna get are people who are already going to give you answers.
Can I point back to both of you and say, if you were to think, so one of the goals of the, back up to your original question, one of the goals is to kind of take the light out of the bushel, so to speak. We've been working for a year or so. Let's start to raise awareness of this is happening. So mostly, that's probably one of the biggest goals. We're working on something that's important, that's gonna involve everybody. If we can get that accomplished, that's already really good.
Right, yeah.
2 would be to start to get a sense of what some of the barriers might be that we are gonna have as we move into plan implementation.
Right.
So what are the concerns? Where are people gonna feel less comfortable?
Right.
Where people just have no idea about it right now.
I get that can be as push-pull.
Yeah.
But I think you wanna be, I think at some
Go
point,
lighter.
you're just gonna start losing people.
Do you agree with those goals, though? I should ask. I mean, or do you think those are the right goals for this first survey?
Say them again?
So one is raising awareness for what we're working on.
Right.
Okay,
Because at some point, we're gonna start doing public meetings for individual actions, right? You're gonna, for CEA, we have public hearings for, I'm sorry, municipal aggregation. We're going to have public hearings for. If we do zoning bylaw changes, we're gonna have public hearings for, and we want people to understand that there's a framework, there's a process by which these were recommended. There's a reason why they're actually coming before the town. Goes back to what the state's told us to do, we're doing it. These are the things that we think are gonna move the needle. Now we need you engaged. So people can't say, I didn't know this was happening,
Right.
right? That's the nightmare scenario.
All right.
So I think that that's probably the top line goal, is to start to get people into the process. And then the second would be, if we can get a little bit of a temperature read on where people are either on their awareness concern for climate issues.
Right.
And awareness and readiness for any of the actions.
Okay. Well, with that in mind,
Yes.
I would say we do this with the Newton, 4 actions type of thing and chunk it that way. Here, we're doing 4, we think of 4 actions. Where is your comfort level on this? Where do you think you are on this journey? And where do you want to go and be? And maybe you get a temperature where people are where they want to be. And you're also telling them there's gonna be 4 actions. If we do 4 actions, but like I'm just saying the Newton makes it.
so I'm sort of with Kevin also, because I was at, one of the pieces that will be right in front of us will be Uni-Ag, right? So we really need to understand comfort or discomfort with making that kind of a switch. It almost needs a, did you know, or a something, right? So in that sense, I felt we could be much more specific.
Okay.
And
Is there anything that we're missing?
I don't think we need to do it all in one,
We
that's
can
the
chunk
other
it down.
thing.
Yeah. I think that's a good insight.
I don't know, Cecilia, do you know, on the town survey system, did we fill out demographics the first time we were there, that it somehow is able to track to us? Do you know?
I don't know.
Because I wondered if we needed to do demographics again, or if somehow it held that once you were in the system.
I'm not sure.
Oh, you mean
Okay.
like it can track an individual?
Yeah.
So I
be
have
able
no
to
idea
spit
what
that
the
out.
system is, but I would guess it's probably not being captured because of privacy concerns.
If it's aggregated, I don't know that it matters, but,
I mean, literally a specific person, not just their age, gender, so exactly who
well,
it is. you know,
these kind of ranges and that kind of demographics, yeah.
So just demographics. We don't need
Yeah,
to know the
I
person,
I didn't know if we
demographics.
needed that,
to
or if
ask those
somehow it was
questions.
held in the system.
Well, get it back to the goal for a second, so. For all intents and purposes, no one in town knows what we're doing, anything
Right.
about what we're doing.
Yeah, there's a
So there's.
couple
the
hundred
goal.
people who know
Yeah,
we're doing
yeah,
this.
it's very, very low. People probably eventually stay that way, but anyway.
No, it's not.
Well, the town meeting, anyway, so very, so the goal is, we have to start engaging the public what we're doing. Here's a 2030 goal, here's a 2050. That's the main thing. Buying an EV, doing this, and exactly how we're gonna get there. It matters, but we need to let them know we're working on this. And how they can, and to what degree they care, to some degree. Is that what this survey is actually about?
Yeah.
It's really just engaging them so they know we're doing something, but we're asking them some questions
A
at the
little bit
same
of a
time.
coming out party.
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in a way, we could take the questions. About, would you do this, would you,
Take those out.
well, or make them very high level.
Yeah,
Have you thought,
Yeah.
and then for follow-up, drill into those big 4, so to speak. I saw the initial draft of this and it's. I think this, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
That's a compliment that it's half.
No, but I think that maybe if we look at the goals of the survey and then say, we'll do a. Yeah, this is our, wave at the window, and then we invite people in a couple months in a follow-up survey.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
I guess I would say for this initial survey, it should be maybe more about what are the gaps or opportunities that we have to educate people? What are they interested in? And then later assess their willingness. So splitting those into sort of two.
Okay, so it's more like just interest. It's almost like,
Yeah.
It's
do
a
you want,
baseline.
Yeah,
It's like
the
you get a
baseline,
baseline.
yeah.
Right, like,
Yeah.
yeah. Have you looked into this? Do you know, so that we can understand?
should we also be asking them, do you want to become involved in any of this yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
We could ask that. That's interesting.
There's a lot of questions that are, how willing would you be to support this? How willing would you do this? And instead be like, which of the below are you willing to do? And then there's one question and kind of answer all of them.
Right.
Sure, something like that.
I might rewrite it, just to Mary Ann's point, it was like, you might be willing to do something, but there might be other reasons why you can't do it.
Yeah, I like having the
I-
barriers in there, because I think that is
Yeah.
really
I
important.
found the word unwilling a little extreme. I think I'd suggest reluctant. Because
More information.
I'm not unwilling to do it. But I'm reluctant.
How about if we say something, are you considering doing one of these in the next
Okay.
5
Yeah.
years?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That way they're not committing to it.
The other question I would ask is whether the town, I know through green energy, you have energy coaches, for instance.
Yes.
Do we ask that?
What do we ask?
So in Concord, you can sign up to get an energy coach. Come to your house. First, you have to do the math save. Then you can get a 1 hour walkthrough. And people say, oh, I'm interested in transitioning to air source heat pumps. What does that mean? And how would my system work? So
And I think they need a specific example, like if your oil burner fails or your gas burner fails. Would you be interested in? I mean, I think that kind of data might be useful for us as
in
staff.
talking, when
For
you
planning.
have to replace your heating system, would you be interested in talking to Mass Save and an energy coach?
Or someone who can help you
It's that
Somebody who can. help.
transition.
sounds like a second
So
question
that's
here
the
when we're
second,
getting.
yeah, I
into
think
the
that's a
weeds.
later tier.
I don't think it's that far down. the
I don't
road.
think it's that far down the
I
road.
think that's
They're-
an issue for now.
Their heating systems that are
Joe?
failing today.
Joe, do you have a question?
No, I would say I agree. Like I think this is the key issue. And I agree, starting with something like, do you know anyone that has installed a heat pump? I'd start with that, like just awareness. And then is, if your, heating system failed, would you consider, exploring heat pump technology? And then what would be your resource to doing that? A friend, a neighbor, a contractor, the town, or Mass Save? Like, where would you go first? I think really understanding, where they would go if they were interested. And just to say that, look, there's multiple channels that they could hit to get more information.
Which we could,
You know what? I just want to say before I lose the thought, that idea of, do you know anyone who's installed a heat pump? That could be a great question over time. Because we should see that, like you could ask that on every survey and hopefully over time you would see it go up. Or
Which
once
is-
a year, you'd be sure that was included or something.
And
yeah, do you
I,
know anyone who's put a heat pump in, installed solar? Who would
Since
you,
2020, interesting stat I just got from the building
who
department
would you
today.
go to?
Around 250 solar installations have gone up in Needham since 2020.
We should track a bunch of those because those are actually interesting things to include on a survey or to include somewhere. We should like capture those.
Yeah.
Maybe if we send them to Cecilia, we could just put them in a doc and then start to pull them when somebody.
I think that it would also be a good question. Are you aware of the grant funding available?
Right.
Or I think the other,
Because then people say, oh, there's money.
Yeah, I think they should, the phrasing feels like, puts me on the defensive. I think it's more, instead of are you willing, gosh, oh, yeah, it's more, have you considered any of the following technologies or changes and or, just to get that.
To build off of what Joe has said, in terms of listing resources or asking resources to say, if if we had someone, an impartial energy coach available,
Partial.
would you be interested in this service?
Yeah, it can't be anyone connected with any business whatsoever.
No, but,
But there's Homeworks Energy,
Yeah.
that I think.
but to get.
There's a difference, there's a difference between
Yeah.
Horace Energy and an energy coach.
Coach, yeah.
And we don't have,
It has to be someone extremely knowledgeable.
but just to
Okay,
raise the question, once again, to stay out of the weeds, to raise the question. This resource could be available to you, does this interest you?
All right, so in the interest of moving along, I've got great feedback here. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to revise the questionnaire. Actually, I'm going to rewrite it from scratch. And I'll send it out to each of you. And if you have additional thoughts and ideas, it's applied directly to me. And then I will work with Amy Helson to eventually get this approved and into the system. So
Or to Cecilia.
Just
You-
Cecilia.
you can send it to me or Cecilia, but I'm gonna be drafting it, so please send it to me as well.
Is this something we think we're gonna continue to do over time? Because that's a very different, if we're trying to do a survey in part to understand where we are in 2023 and then where we are in 2024 around awareness and adoption of these things. Are we building over time a set of data points?
that's
Or
my
are we doing this
assumption.
as just kind of exploratory, helps us?
No, my assumption is this is a baseline.
Yeah.
Starting point, and then eventually we'll hopefully have a sustainability coordinator who can take this going forward, but.
Yeah, I can see,
That's
I can,
really different than the way we phrase these. I think there are certain things we want to know. Maybe just around general awareness that we can build over time and really have a, that will help us understand if some of these interventions are actually are we really educating people over time? Are more people aware? Are they considering this more? Have more people adopted this? Because we're not going to have all the data. I know we have some solar data, but it's imprecise, so.
Just a thought. There are a lot of surveys in the field and didn't Kate say like people may be being surveyed to death? So.
Yes, well,
we do this
Amy-
carefully.
Amy did mention that, so the timing that we're trying to aim for is early June for this.
Okay.
Because most of the surveys have wrapped up, and then it's before people go away for the summer. And that's a very tight window.
where would the survey be? Submitted?
So it would be a town website, town email, and then most likely we would try to amplify it through our various channels. The Green Needham would probably pick it up and push it out, and League of Women Voters might pick it up and push it out.
And maybe need a non-electronic version somewhere.
Can we get like a QR code?
I'm not
in the
committing
library?
to hand telling.
Hand
No, it could be barcode. No, little dots, little black dots.
It's electronic.
I guess,
Hey, Teddy will let me use.
And scan.
Yeah, but you could throw a QR code at the library or
Yep.
something like
Yeah,
that, or
Yeah,
at Sudbury
could definitely do
Farms
that,
or.
absolutely.
5 questions or less. I know that's not that many, but I'm telling you.
People don't want to
Like surveys, long surveys.
I will take that into account. All right, so our next topic is our key actions for 2023-24. And so we have already had several recommendations that have gone to the select board. So last year, about this time, we recommended the municipal aggregation, which got adopted at town meeting last fall. We are now interviewing consultants, and that process will kick off. Back in, I think it was January, we recommended the sustainability coordinator. There's been a lot of discussions on that. Not yet resolution or progress. I don't know if you have anything.
So I'm not at this point optimistic. I think where we are is if we can define specific things that we want done, like the energy coaches or something like that, then we think that there are some sources of funds that we can use to start some of that work. And a commitment from Kate that it will go in the budget for next year. And we've told FinCom, by the way, this is coming as an ad.
Okay, so
in the
it'll be
budget
spring,
for next
spring
year.
town meeting next year.
Springtime meeting next year, yeah.
Uh,
So they
would
know
that
it's
go
coming.
in, actually, the budget, not as a warrant article, separate?
The budget.
It will go in the budget, which is a negotiation too, but
Negotiation.
yes,
Yes, understood,
yes.
understood, that we need to prove the
Right.
need for it.
But I do think if we want to do something with the energy coaches, we think there's that we can find some funding
So thinking more like-
specifically for that.
Projects.
Yeah.
Specific projects.
Yeah.
Okay. We should think about that maybe for our next meeting. There are other ideas like that, your EV stuff. I forgot, by the way, we were supposed to get a quick update on the EVs.
We can do it at the end.
We'll do it at the end? Sure. So those are the two that have been referred. Now, the other things that I think we have discussed but never really voted on are the opt-in specialized code, the zoning bylaws, which I did present to the planning board. Artie was there. So the conversation we had last time around some of the solar changes when we had Dave Roach here, I presented basically a summary of that meeting to the planning board and gave them the same materials that we all reviewed in preparation for that meeting. But I don't think we ever voted whether or not we think that's a priority, and if it is a priority, if we want to refer it to the planning board.
Well, we should talk about that.
Yeah.
Want to talk about it now?
There's been zoning changes for like
This would be a-
solar
yeah.
canopies.
So the three that we talked about was solar canopies, commercial, solar rooftop.
Yeah.
And the third was small and medium ground-based solar arrays in general. They're silent on them today. I think Dave said that he's had a handful of small ones that he's put through as accessory structures.
Yes.
But I don't think that we have a lot of guidelines around it, so it might be worth thinking through, whether or not there's some guidelines that or I guess site review
Yeah.
that goes with the permit process. And then there's nothing for medium. So, one could imagine you're out in the rural district, you've got 7 acres and you want to put 100 solar panels out there. Right? That's not covered today by our zoning and permitting.
100 solar panels is not a lot of square feet.
Well, maybe it's
Yeah,
1,000, I don't know.
No, it'd be a lot more than 100.
Yeah, okay.
Small is only 25.
County 5, that, we don't have a definition of small.
Okay.
So one of the things we should define them and then decide whether or not there are permitting and site review.
I mean, we could potentially define, I guess, small as some that fits into the state's cap. 25 kilowatt AC cap, which then brings the DC level to somewhere around 32 to 35 kilowatt DC, for example.
So
We could.
these are great conversations, I think,
Yeah.
that the planning board probably needs to have in
Yeah.
its public review
Yeah.
process.
Sure.
I don't think we need to figure it out. I
Yeah,
think
we
what
just said, tell us the goals.
Do we want to vote to like?
Yeah, so I think someone can make a motion and then discuss it.
Sure. I make a motion.
Motion to,
I want to ask the planning board to do zoning for solar arrays, panels, and canopies.
But do we also want to have the extension of the possible extension of roof height allowance for solar over the mechanicals on the roof?
so
That's all part of.
That's
the
part of
solar.
it.
Well,
That's all
well,
part of it.
that may be part of it, but it's definitely a different bylaw.
Well,
Yes, certainly.
yes,
Yes.
no, so I think,
Words I don't know.
so can I rephrase your
Yeah.
proposal? Commercial rooftop,
Yeah.
solar. Planning, parking canopies and then ground-based small and medium solar arrays. That we'd like the planning board to work on those 3 things in the bylaws. And the specifics to be decided by the planning board in the top process. And do we have a second on that?
Second.
All right. Do we want to talk about it more?
Is there anything at all, anything else that we want to go to the planning board for
Well,
this?
so this is one group, right?
This is one group.
Okay.
And I just want to put in the context for everybody that the single biggest thing the planning board is going to have to do in the
Yes.
next year is MBTA communities.
Mhm.
So this is all in context. So at some
Mhm.
point, I think we're going to expect the planning board to come back and tell us what their workload can actually support successfully.
Agreed.
So,
Of these 3 items, perhaps we should prioritize the. And my thought would be that prioritize the commercial solar rooftop. A more expansive definition to allow for more solar on rooftops. Of these three, I would say be the highest priority, followed by parking lot canopies, followed by ground mount, simply because I don't think.
Well, I think the site, part of me thinks the height allowance for solar is perhaps a little more important than ground mount.
Well,
Because
height
I don't think ground mounts.
The height
An issue
the
going
height
on these
allowance
days.
is coming out, we're putting that as
So-
the
In
the
commercial.
commercial.
Yeah,
rooftop.
on the commercial rooftop, if you
Okay.
remember from our meeting with
Okay.
Dave Roach, he said that the issue with the commercial solar today is that the solar is lumped in with all the mechanicals. And so when we look at our height restrictions and our roof coverage in the bylaws, it's all lumped together. His recommendation was that it should be separated out.
Yeah.
That we should continue to allow the mechanicals to be governed by those height restrictions and those setbacks, roof coverage, but solar should be treated separately because it's a different type of beast. And he felt that there's some commercial entities who have not approached the town about putting solar on it because I feel like it's a
Well-
risk that they're not gonna.
Well, I mean, that's what, Michael Rice, he's talking to me all the time about this. Already get it done, already get it done. Okay.
So in terms of. We can. Make the recommendation and the planning and maybe. Frame the recommendation a little more concisely based on our last discussion.
So you would prioritize commercial solar, parking canopies, and then the ground base.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with that? The only argument I think for the canopies potentially is that the town has a strong interest in pursuing that. And it's a cumbersome process the way it is today. Now Olin is doing.
I'm personally, I'm fine putting the solar canopies first, before the commercial rooftop, because the commercial rooftop, we need to say something so companies aren't afraid. But that'll be, that in my opinion, most of that will be an easy ask. It's the height restrictions a little bit more so, but most of it's an easy ask. The solar canopies take a little bit more conversation,
Right, stormwater runoff.
Okay, fair enough.
well, which is actually, will be a good thing, because it clean, keeps it clean.
Right.
And just so you know, I mean, we definitely agree with what we have for workload. We've already set, for all such purposes, said that we don't think the MBTA Act zoning bylaw change will come to town meeting until October 24.
Which is not correct.
That's correct,
Yeah, October 24.
but there's still a lot to happen.
Oh, yeah, there's still a lot, yeah, still a lot to happen, but we are, in general, I use the word we, a lot of us, I think, on the planning board think that we would like to bring some of these zoning bylaws to this October town meeting.
So something like this could
Yes,
potentially get prioritized.
Yes, though we do understand with the MDD and Needham Housing Authority has something they're working through, we're gonna have some type of bylaw to bring that to October town meeting as well.
Okay.
So we do have things to work.
So, any other discussion? So I think what we have is a motion to refer these three articles, but prioritize commercial first, commercial rooftop, second parking canopies, third ground base. So if we could get only one thing done this fall,
I'm fine.
you say you could do flipping the canopy.
I'm fine flipping it, but I don't think we have to, I don't think we're gonna have to just have.
My sense is with the boilerplate that DOER has given us,
Mhm.
that the planning board already has in its hands. That was amongst the documents that I provided when we spoke.
Yeah.
That aside from public review process and getting comments and making maybe some of the judgment calls that they asked you to make, it's not a lot of work.
I know, I don't think it'll be a lot of work. It'll be important to get it right, but I don't think it's a lot of work. It's important to make sure the public really knows what's going on, because to make sure we get it right.
Absolutely.
That's part of it.
We can say our priorities, we should prioritize.
Correct. Fair enough.
You guys figure out your own.
Sure, once it's on your desk, it's on your desk. Okay, so let's come to the vote. We'll start
roll
with
call.
Joe.
Aye.
Aye, okay, Nick,
Aye.
Rachel. Aye, Paul. Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
Marion, and the chair votes aye. Okay. So we'll refer that over, and I assume I have to probably write a minute Letter to the chair. Okay, so that's our last order of business today is then, oh, sorry.
Can I just bring up one? I don't
Yeah.
know if this is a tangent to this. But speaking of MBTA zoning, climate change and planning. Is there anything we want to say, like, if MBTA zoning is coming on, do you want to say planning should also include EV charging for these units? That's not on street and like that, like. I don't know how that would work, but if
So,
there's new zoning and new construction,
yeah.
is an EV part of it.
Right, so I had a conversation with Adam Block recently about some other ideas he had for increasing the efficiency of commercial structures and possibly getting solar on those structures as well. My response to him is that I think a lot of those types of changes get taken care of both through the stretch codes
Okay.
and this opt-in specialized code. So the stretch codes, just to remind everybody, we already are in those and they're being updated. And I think July 1st, they go into effect and they basically make things even more efficient than they have been. So the buildings that are being built today are already much more efficient than they were 10, 20 years ago. They're going to get more efficient and then they're going to get more efficient again. In a few years as the stretch code ratchets down those HERS ratings, right? So that's going to happen.
Okay.
If we do nothing, that's going to happen.
Okay.
In those stretch codes, there's also for larger units and commercial units, there are additional pathways those entities can take to get to those HERS ratings.
Okay.
And some of that involves like on-site energy production and EV chargers.
Okay.
Where I think we still have an opportunity, and I do think of the MBTA Communities Act as something that we should be considering in making this next decision, is if we have the opt-in specialized code in place, not only do you get the efficiency standards that we get through the stretch code,
Right.
they're slightly accelerated, but only for new construction. They don't impact any existing construction. They require those buildings to be pre-wired for electric, even if they have fossil fuels. So one of the dangers with buildings being built today, especially these 5,000 square foot homes, 7,000 if you go on Redfin, they are not, if they're not wired for the electricity needs, when it comes time for those furnaces to be replaced, they likely won't be able to replace them with a fossil fuel furnace, which means they'll not only have to take that out and put heat pumps in, they'll have to rewire the whole home and possibly upgrade
It would
the
be mostly the upgrade from the street.
and
the
upgrade
wire.
the street.
Yeah,
And so what the specialized code would do today is it would say, if you're going to build a new home over 4,000 square feet or a multifamily or certain types of commercial structures, you should be pre-wiring it for an electric only future, even if it's not electric only.
Okay.
And that does include EV chargers. And there's a ratio that they have for, so I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, we could try to piecemeal together what
Right.
the specialized code does, but that's a lot of work. And faster, quicker solution would be to say, let's adopt the specialized code.
Okay.
So that's my view, but I wanted to bring it to this group and see.
are we saying that we're gonna suggest to bring an article at time meeting to adopt? The higher opt-in version versus,
Opt-in.
versus.
That's what we're discussing.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what we're discussing.
discuss.
now. That is what we're discussing. So, if, yeah, I don't have the materials here. The main difference between the specialized code and the stretch code today is that it accelerates some of those HERS ratings that the stretch code is going to get to. And then it pre-wires for electric.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's in
And
the
it's
special.
it only addresses new construction. So any renovation.
Well, unless the renovation is more than 50% of the. Yeah, unless it's more than 50%.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, if it triggers that.
Triggers that
New
boom,
construction.
yeah.
Classement, yeah, exactly.
Then they just tear the house
That's it. There we go.
And then they've got a new construction.
There you go.
So, we talked with Eversource at our last meeting, and so. In the minutes, hopefully everybody really read the minutes, because we tried very hard to make it representative of that conversation. What I think we heard. Was that from the electricity generating plant. Through the wires to our substation, there's no major concerns. That we've got enough capacity essentially to 2050 full electrification. There might be a few days in 2050 where we are over their threshold, their 90% threshold, and like one of the major elements goes down. But they'll plan for that as they get closer to that.
What I heard was, if we stayed where we kind of are, at 2050 will be okay. I didn't hear, I didn't hear that if everyone transitions. So everyone transitions to 20, the
Yes.
existing structure.
Yes.
To the
Existing-
substation, to the substation, to the substation, substation's headroom is sufficient to support full electrification of Needham. That's what they
That
stated.
doesn't mean we have the distribution. That's what
So
they're.
the piece that they said may be an issue, and this is something that we left kind of as needing further exploration, is at the cans. So Hank showed me the cans that were added to the pole over here for the EV chargers, and there's 3 cans or 4 cans? Three cans, and how many EV chargers is that?
There are 4 stations, but its capacity will be for a total of 10.
10 stations, okay, so they built transformers on the poles to support 10 EV chargers in this lot here.
And the meter and the switchgear
Right.
is set, so we could install a total of 10 EV chargers.
May I ask how much that costs, just for curiosity's sake?
The majority of it, I'll have to go back and get it. I think somewhere in the range of 200,000, and the town paid about 20,
Does that include an EV charger installations or just the cans?
everything.
Everything's okay.
Yeah,
So the
when I'm-
cans I've been told are typically, I keep calling them the cans, because they're little big cans, about $10,000.
Well, in the residential area, if Eversource comes and says, no, it can't support the backfeed, you homeowner need to replace it. At that point, it's usually $3,700, $4,500.
4,500.
Yeah,
It just
$3,700,
happens often with
$4,500.
solar arrays, correct?
Well, it can happen, so how often it happens, it's happening more so, but sometimes what happens is people are putting a battery in at the same time. The battery and the solar are backfeeding to the same transformer, then the battery itself could trigger the transformer upgrade. But without question, it's happening more and more because more transformers are having backfeed with solar. But
So-
that's where the cost usually rise
So it's 3,500 to,
to $4,700. It's the general replacement of a transformer. If people have a very large solar system and then they say you need your own dedicated personal transformer, then it gets up to that, it's $8,500.
Right.
But most times it's not.
so the typical practice of Eversource is to charge the homeowner that triggers it. Which means that everybody else who's next in line kind of free rides off the first person through.
Until you get to Harmony.
Yeah. Until
Well,
it's
until,
free,
yeah.
until it maxes out that one.
So I
Sounds
put a,
unfair, right?
what's that?
Sounds unfair.
It sounds unfair, yeah. So I did put out a question to the Building Electrification Accelerator, and that was a document that I shared with you. It's a little bit of jumble of responses, but that's the way they came in. So generally, it's understood that this is a problem. That it is actually, one of the persons responded and says it typically is happening with solar arrays today. Because of the amount of power the solars generate, and it has to go back through the transformer. That's where often the first person triggers it. It's not like the individual heat pump guy or the individual EV charger guy.
Well, yeah, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. Is what it is.
It is, and it's usually a big straw, is the issue.
Yeah.
But there's certainly the possibility that a brand new home, especially a 5,000 square foot home on heat pumps with 2 EV chargers, you know,
Yeah,
heat pump,
could
hot water
require-
heater, heat pump, you know, et cetera, you would be needing potentially a larger service than what's at the pole. at that
Yeah.
point.
It definitely, at some point, it sounds like where we're going, every house has a 400 amp service going to it.
I did talk to
Not
a
most.
electrician this week, he said the 200 amp service, which had kind of become the standard for a long time, and he says he's putting in fewer and fewer 200 amp services.
Yeah.
He's doing more 400
Yeah,
now.
200 amp can service a 3,000 square foot house, 2,000 to 3,000 square foot house. It can probably service that fine with heat pumps in general.
Right.
But yeah, you start getting into larger capacity, more EVs and
Multiple EVs charging.
yeah,
at the same
multiple
time.
EVs and so forth.
And I think it's worth adding that, so Eversource, recognizes this as an issue to electrification and not penalizing, the first people in. So they are rethinking the cost allocation model of upgraded services because of, these types of ordinances, et cetera. So that's in the works. That's going to change.
Do you have a sense on timing? Because that was said in the responses to the email I sent out. But do you have?
I'd say within the next 2 years, that they would definitely, work with DPU to get those rule changes put into effect. I mean, it's a big issue in the cities, even a bigger issue than it is in the suburbs right now.
Yeah, the city has a huge issue with infrastructure and any type of solar at all. Yeah, Boston's a disaster. For example, solar.
So I do feel like we should have sort of a consistent message that we should be taking to MMA and MAPC, and when we meet with our legislators, that just hammers home that this is actually a critical problem to solve
It is, yeah.
for everybody.
I was actually considering reaching out to Denise and Rebecca about this. Would you like to be in that conversation?
I'd be happy to be in that conversation. I
So
think that's
it's-
important.
So distribution system equity,
Yeah,
for
so,
lack of a better
yeah.
catchphrase.
So if you look at your electricity bill, there's all of these fees on there now. And a lot of those fees were designed specifically to defray the costs for upgrades to the system for different reasons. But there isn't one for the transformers. So is that what your understanding is, Joe? Is that it potentially might be another fee added to the standard electricity bill? To be generated?
Yeah, I don't have any idea how they're planning to work it, whether it's in the bill or, they get the Commonwealth just to put some money in the kitty to incentivize the first in folks on electrification, that they're still working through the how. But I think they recognize the what they need to fix, the allocation for upgrades to service.
Right. So, yeah, back to the specialized code, because this is a consideration I think we need to be aware of. I think one of the questions for this committee is, do we want to move forward with the specialized code and anticipate the state that will fix this in time?
Is there a way we could move forward with the specialized code just with the new construction piece?
It's
Not-
it's 100% new
No,
construction.
well, except for the renovation with the, triggering. I'd almost rather leave some of the renovation and triggering out and go for anything new. I want to build fully
Yeah.
electrified, right?
Yeah.
But the rest of
Is
it
there a
feels to me, so is there a way to extract that and just go forward with that first? It feels to me like there's some things people are gonna learn about this renovation that have some potential bad sides to it that I don't think have been fully thought through. That's my concern.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I mean,
I don't think we have the option to.
Yeah, you can't.
Unless
can't-
we carve out our own,
We can't.
No, you can't.
Now
You
you're
can't do
usurping
that.
the
The
state.
state code.
Yeah, you're usurping state authority.
I mean, if we were to hypothetically, in town meeting in the spring, were to adopt the specialized code, it would go into effect January 1, 2025,
That's right.
because it's 6 months after the January or July
At
1st.
least 6 months.
Yeah. So, and it could also be something town meeting could decide, or the board could decide upon further reflection, we want the stretch code to go into effect 12 months or 9 months after it doesn't have to be, we could vote to delay it. We could say, we want to do this, but have it go into effect July 1st, 25.
well, I mean, that puts off the inevitable issue of someone doing a renovation and triggering the whole thing. And Dave was talking about, at least I believe he was talking about all the building commissioners around the state thinking it's unfairly impacting people in other parts of the state where they're putting an addition on their house, which wasn't a big house. Now they're putting an addition. Now the whole thing has to be upgraded in parts of the state where that's a big financial problem. He made it sound like he would like the state to change that code where it doesn't trigger.
It's not gonna, I mean, basically the state is already says.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Do we get to net zero or we don't?
Well,
Right? The way to not get there is to not change the building codes. Because that is the biggest source of carbon in the state.
well,
is the building.
but also the way we don't get there sometimes is tearing down houses, which are perfectly acceptable. But now they're being torn down because this addition triggers the whole thing, so the whole thing's being torn down. That's an incredible environmental waste.
Yes, but they're being torn down anyway.
They're being torn down anyway.
I mean, there's enough economic pressure to.
Yeah,
I'm
we-
not sure
we
that
could-
this
we
is
could-
triggering.
Yeah.
This is gonna push someone to say, now I'm gonna knock it down. I don't know, is that what you're concerned with? You had a reaction to it, is it because you're concerned more people will choose to tear down, is that?
Well,
Or is
I
it-
think it definitely confirms that tear down is gonna be the only path. Whereas right now, right, there's a lot of people who would like us to figure out how to persuade people not to tear down and build a 4,000 square foot house on their lot, right? But we're gonna be taking that option away, it feels to me, if we go forward with the new super stretch code.
Yeah,
Some
I'd
is-
agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's unintended consequences, right? And I think that, this has to play out. I don't think we want Needham to be the first town to like learn the unintended consequences. I think,
We're not-
I like the idea of our intent is to adopt the specialized code 3 years from now. And we will learn from other towns that do this, and the Commonwealth might start to, DOER might start to amend it to say, hey, for housing renovations, like we can carve that piece out, like, but I think more time and a little more information, it'll start to evolve in that direction.
Here's my concern, Joe. We're tearing down 100 homes a year right now in Needham. Do you know what the average size, the actual size of those homes that are going on? It's not 4,000. It's 7. Do you know why it's 7? Because 2,000 square feet is unfinished space. That unfinished
yeah.
space is still getting heated and cooled. And they're putting 4, 5 air conditioners out there. They're not doing it with heat pumps,
Well, I personally
and they're
believe,
not building it to the highest efficiency standard.
well, I personally believe the attic should count as a living space.
Well, okay, I don't wanna get into
It's
the-
separate-
I don't wanna get into
it's
this.
Separate topic.
I don't wanna get into the-
Separate topic, but we're going on.
My point is, 3 years, that's 300 homes
100%.
that will not be net zero at 2050. If we wait 3 years, I think that's not responsible. And I understand that there are costs associated with it. I would also say, if you're doing a renovation that is doubling the size of your house, and you have to upgrade the transformer for $3,000, it's a rounding error on your renovation bill. Right?
Well,
It's
yeah.
gonna cost
Yeah.
less than 2 appliances in your kitchen. That
Less
you're
than
putting in.
one.
Less than one.
Less
in
than
your
one
kitchen that
sometimes.
need,
sure.
right? Nobody buys
Plus, yeah.
Sears appliances in Blooming.
Right.
They don't exist.
They don't exist. I'm
Well,
sorry.
they-
Sears
they
doesn't exist
never-
anymore.
They never did, they were Kenmore.
Anyway, My
I
point
remember
is,
something else.
that, yes, $3,000, $5,000 for a can for a new home. But I did look at the new homes for sale this week.
Sure.
This week, I looked at every one on Redfin that was for sale. There was new construction. Every single house was 4,000 square feet or above, and some were 8,000.
No, it's just embarrassing. I find it embarrassing.
There was a $6.5 million house. And if a $6.5 million house cannot afford the upgrade for a transformer,
Right.
I don't know who can, and we should just ban this.
Or can't afford to wire it for electric.
But we've got two
So-
questions. One, there's the 6.5 million square foot house. But for example, if I were to add a second story to my ranch house, I would be adding 1,100 square feet. And
Trigger. Well,
even though I love my street, at that point, I'd probably tear the darn thing down, which I wouldn't want to do. And I think that's kind of the
Right.
implication that Dave was talking about in terms of unintended consequences.
I'm not sure it's not intended consequence. So I did see a good discussion about this, and I think there was a member of the PU or GOER on the phone.
Right.
one of those two. And they asked him about this. They said, is it an intended consequence if we trigger this having to upgrade the efficiency of the home? And his point was, we debated it. And if you do a loophole, we never get there. If we put a loophole, we never get there. The houses that are inefficient today will be inefficient in 2050. And his point was, if you're going to make the investment and upgrade your home, that is the only chance you get between now and 2050. To get you.
All right,
to
well,
It's
upgrade your house.
2023. That's not it's not a long time
No,
at this
it's
point. So if you're gonna make a huge upgrade in 2025, then you're not gonna then make another change in those 25 years. I agree with that. Like, if you're gonna build a house in 2025, or you're gonna do an enormous upgrade, that's the way it's gonna look for the next 25 years.
And that's
Yeah.
probably even. the
It's
equipment.
unlikely you're gonna go back and make the investment unless something significantly.
So I don't think it was an unintended consequence. I think it was a deliberate choice, and sure that there's an impact there. But we're debating specifically the impact on the utilities, right? Again, you know, at 1,000 square foot, I don't know what it is, 500 per square feet now for putting that in a new home. I mean, that would be maybe $250,000, $300,000 renovation, and that $3,000 bill, $5,000 bill is.
It's not.
It's just a rounding error.
Yeah.
So, where I'm more concerned is if somebody wants to do like solar or, you know, just add heat pumps in their place, which is a $50,000 investment, and suddenly it's $55,000. In those cases, I do think we need to advocate with the state. For those cases, advocate for the state, and then hopefully those costs defray across everybody, which would help the $5 million home people too, which is not a problem. I don't mind helping.
I mean, I don't envision in general, when people want to add an air source heat pump. Yeah, maybe it triggers the 100 amp going to 200 amp, but not counting the 7,000 square foot house, but a lot of houses, it won't trigger an upgrade in the street for the transformer. It may trigger as 100 amp to 200 amp, but a lot of those will not trigger anything further beyond that.
So question, Stephen, it seems like we have two separate, since we're talking about goals, we have two separate items. One is, do we recommend going to the specialized code? The second.
Opt-in.
Yes.
Opt-in.
Okay.
Right, we've already gone to the.
Someone once called it the stretchier code.
Uh-huh.
But the second more narrow thing is, do we recommend that the select board work with Eversource and the DPU to make sure the electrical distribute, kind of generalize, but
Advocacy.
to advocacy for Needham's local distribution system be equitably upgraded? Because
Yeah.
that applies across the board.
I think Karis has that on the list already, and I mean, I don't think it's on our goals list right now. It might be able to be
It's a
something that
little
could be considered,
esoteric,
but
but it's
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 a
a shame,
huge
but it's
issue
under-
and it's gonna take focus.
it's the undercurrent.
Yeah.
Under all this.
It almost seems to be a grant for that, the state grant, first adopters.
It still feels like a very small price to pay for us to move in this direction, and we're not adopting it this year. We're talking about probably a good 18 months from now, right?
The earliest we could get it is July 2024 at this point, but the next opportunity would be January
Right,
2025.
so 12 to 18 months.
Sure, forgive me, everyone. There's a special thing going up on the Women Voters meeting tonight at 8 PM. I need to go.
All right,
So my apologies, guys. I need to be at that.
thank you, Artie.
Thanks, everybody. See you.
Any further discussion on this? Thoughts?
I would recommend that we move forward, but we have to be.
Do we want to talk to like building department some more about, say, just let's suss out all the details, because if we recommend it, we're gonna be asked 100 questions, and so you probably just want to have ducks in order.
If we have a summer intern who could mine the data from the 10 or more communities that are going through this right now.
Well, they won't go
They'll
through
need
it
to
till
start it.
January 2024.
Discussions are happening And warrant articles are being written in various towns.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant, so right now, as of today, my understanding is that towns, cities and towns representing about a quarter of the state's population have adopted it. The opt-in specialized code, including Newton, Wellesley, Watertown, Brookline, you know, a lot of our local residents, but it won't go into effect until January of next year.
That somebody
So,
has.
so we're talking about the analysis, and the analysis has been done multiple
they were.
times.
Did they?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
thought they had
I
it
think
going in
Brookline-
sooner.
Oh, because then, did they vote in November of last year?
They were the first to
Yeah,
vote,
they
and for
voted
some
before it was
reason, I
released.
think they
Yeah.
have it starting in July.
Right.
Yeah,
Everybody else, I think, is in January.
Can we get the analysis?
Well, yeah, what I'm saying is, these debates have gone on in multiple communities. And they probably have Q and As out there and a lot of detailed data. As to why they were recommending adopting. We're not the first
We're not
to go down this path. And
Yeah.
that's the advantage of following.
Well, yeah.
I think that would be helpful to have, because I do think it's gonna be a big question at town meeting that we'll have to have solid answers to. And I guess I don't feel like I know what the answers are yet, so that's definitely part of my
Yeah.
concern.
and I think if we bring it to town meeting, I think everyone I've talked to said, you know, if we bring it there, we want to have it passed. We don't want to.
Get thrown back.
So order of operations, though, it has to get onto the select board goal list for it to eventually get onto a warrant article to go to town. We have June, at this meeting, we have June. And then, okay, that's it. Right, so I guess the question is, do you feel like you feel
So
uncomfortable
we
enough?
won't talk about goals till August, right? Are we not gonna meet again before then?
We have a June meeting.
We have a June meeting, but if we have a summer intern, that's what I'm thinking.
We won't have enough time to get to your goals. But let me back this up. I have a treasure trove of this information already in my hands. So through
That
the,
could be handed to somebody when they exist. I mean, it could be that we end up with a goal that says, consider adopting, right?
Right.
With an understanding that there's some work that's going on here to sort of dimension what that means in a
Right.
better way.
We could even say consider adopting, well, in 2024, I guess by definition, it's in 2024.
Would you, so would you want to take a vote saying this committee will makes a recommendation, select board makes a
Consider.
recommendation, yeah, to consider. So that would try
For
be
their
enough to
goals.
put down the placeholder,
Right,
so the quarter on the pool.
is that something that the select board would feel comfortable with?
so the select board is having one of those years where we've been challenged by the town manager to do less, but that doesn't mean that the committee can't suggest.
Fair enough.
Right.
And do you want a goal that says consider? I mean, if that doesn't feel like a goal, well, we're not ready then, if that's what our recommendation is. I think we need to get to a point where.
Well, let me put it,
You know,
let me
sometimes
back
goals
up.
are written-
Let me back up. We're an advisory. We can just outright recommend.
Right.
Right, that you
Yeah.
adopt the
Adopt,
opt-in,
yeah.
and you can choose to ignore that. To be diplomatic, but that's what
Okay.
this is.
Fair enough.
But I think that from our perspective, I think we want to be clear.
Yeah.
We believe this is a high priority item worth spending time on as a town, worth educating town meeting on and populace on, worth developing whatever materials we need to support that effort and running whatever information campaigns we need to run to support it. Do we believe that? And if so, I would probably need a motion.
Yeah, I would say our working group thought that was the top priority on the building energy and, you know, emissions coming from buildings. This is the number one no-brainer step to take.
Wanna make a motion?
And the
You'll make-
challenge is, the real driver is the new construction, for sure.
Right.
It comes with some other things that.
Right.
We need
Right,
to
yeah, there
understand.
were some other things, and our working group said, we'll get over those.
So Joe, do you have a motion that you'd like to make?
Somebody needs.
Well,
I'll make a,
Yeah, go ahead.
I motion that we recommended adaptation of the adoption of the opt-in specialized code.
I said.
Second. Discussion. All right, come to the vote. Joe?
Aye.
Aye. Rachel?
Hi.
Paul?
Aye.
Aye. Kevin?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so unanimous. Okay, so I will commit then to our next agenda item, check next meeting, bringing in some materials that have been used in other municipalities as they've promoted, as they've supported the adoption of this article. There literally is a treasure trove of it out there, so. Great. I think that comes to the end of our agenda, which is not nearly as 7. I'm sorry, Marianne.
So for an update on the EV.
Oh, update on
the
EVs.
EVs,
EVs, yeah. How did our EV show go, Paul?
Good, it went well. I think we had about 100 or so or more.
That's great.
People. Yeah, it was good. I try to exclude the kids, you know. But, you know, the kids are good because, you know, they grow into this and they can tell their parents to buy an EV, you know? So, and, you know, we had a good collaboration with the New England EV Association. They really helped a lot.
How did you
know?
get the Rivian?
He's part of the group. He goes everywhere. I plugged in the speaker into his vehicle, so that worked out well. And then, the Quirk was good. They brought 6 or 7 vehicles and they were busy all afternoon test driving.
Did they have any of the newer ones like the Blazers?
They had everything. They had quite a few cars. The new Subaru, they had the Genesis, which was really nice. They had the F-150 Lightning was there, so that was nice. So they had a nice mix of cars. And then they want to do it again. You know, we had people clicking on the EV Pledge QR code so they could hopefully sort of get invested in this informational process for their next vehicle. I think that's really our goal. Like, you know, worrying about once houses are built, sort of substandard for the future. If someone buys another car and it's an ICE car, you know, you lose them for 13 years, right? You know, so our real goal, I think, is to sort of get into people's
Does anybody
minds.
keep cars for 13 years? now?
Well, the average length of a car now, you know, cars last a little longer.
Yeah,
They're more
they do
dependable.
last,
I mean,
yeah.
the Pinto days are over,
That's true.
right? So, anyone
Mine
remember
is
Pinto?
11 years
Yeah.
old.
Pinto?
Yeah.
Not dying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2001.
one stop. Anyway, so, you know, I think we should probably do another one at some point and just keep rolling with this and, you know, I think it's a good effort. Although I'd like some information from our consultants about ways to better infiltrate hearts and minds of people to get them to see this as part of the process for their future, you know? The parade, you know, I mentioned that already. I don't know if the parade is still an option here, but that's a nice idea.
So the Exchange Club also does a car show each year, and it's actually, I think, this weekend.
Yes,
Sunday.
it's mostly old cars, isn't it?
It is, but it might be nice at some point to see if there's a way to tie those two things
It'll be
together.
interesting to see if we can crack that cultural model.
It's, you know, Exchange Clubs, there's a lot of new blood there.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, maybe you should let me know who's a good person to approach.
yeah, I don't think they're like opposed to it. I think everybody likes cars. Bring cool cars. They're gonna
Yeah.
look at cool cars.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's opposed to it.
Yeah.
I might wonder if we could make a deal with like Walgreens to run the EV show at a Walgreens parking lot, like do it right in the center of town, if that were an option in the fall or something.
With the green field behind there. too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could space, if you just do an EV event, you would probably get away with it.
I think back to school time is a great time to look at it.
Where else
Well, here,
here?
because we now have 4 chargers.
Well, I was gonna say, or up at the high school parking lot might be
High school
another
would be
place.
That was the one I was hoping for. The only reason
Yeah.
we didn't do it there was because there were no chargers.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing. I didn't think there's gonna be a charger anytime soon. Charger's not critical, you know, like, you know, the cars are gonna go, you know, but, you know, Memorial is in the middle. of
Right.
everything. But I'm really looking for better ways to sort of, you know, for people to be reminded, you know.
So I've been talking with Stacy Mullen, Mulroy,
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. And she's done some outreach through her leagues. And we've already got, one of the youth, football, person, coordinator of the youth football and cheer. Patrick
That I don't
Conlon,
know.
Paul Conlon. He's volunteered to help as well. So one idea, maybe KLA says, go to the fields.
So do it at the.
So maybe it's like, can you get permission to park a couple of EVs on the edge of the ball field? Not a baseball field, but maybe whatever during football season or soccer season.
Yeah.
And have people be able to come and sit in them and,
Yeah.
yeah, not test drive them, but
During the game.
yeah, during the
We need
games.
to figure out who that demographic is in this town of who's about to make a decision, right? And that's the trickiest part. I don't know if we have access to that information or if we're allowed to use that information. in a
Just
way.
based on who
Like-
showed, who showed up, it's two groups. It's family groups with kids,
Mhm.
like 4, 5, 6, and then there's older people.
Yeah.
You know, we saw a fair number of older people who, you know, want a smaller car
Yeah,
and want to buy an EV.
yeah.
So I think that,
So-
that's probably the two demographics.
What was the?
So that would tie in with the, the field strategy
mixed.
gets that younger side.
Yeah, so the KLA,
The
is
6-year-olds
suggesting,
playing soccer.
if you want those people, you can't ask them to come to town hall, they're not coming to town hall. But
They're already at Saturdays in town on Breezefield playing
Yeah, that's where you
soccer.
find
Now
it.
they go
Yeah.
into the. ball
Yeah,
park.
I'm happy to, I think doing something like at the soccer field, or around, or would be terrific. It would be a good spot.
so maybe I can connect with you and Stacy and we can figure out a way.
Yeah, that'd be
to-
interesting,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'll also talk with this, his name's Paul, as well, and see if there's anything we can do with the football.
I mean, we had foot traffic, believe it or not, because we parked a bunch of them right up on the top of the parking lot.
Yeah,
We had a yellow Genesis, it was really cute, really cool looking, and people just stopped, they says, what's going on here? You know, they came in, parked in and stopped, and so, you want to be visible too, but I think that, if you have 1,000 kids playing soccer between 8 and 1, that's a good catch
yeah,
too.
and let them go around.
And the touch and truck.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further, okay, no any walk-ons? Tried.
It's all good.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Rush.
So moved.
So moved. And all those in favor?
Oh, yeah. you will.
Opposed? Roll call on the adjourn. I don't think we-
Technically, every vote is a roll call. for the
Okay.
Hybrid meeting.
Joe?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Rachel? Paul? Kevin?
Yes.
Marianne? Steve, chair votes aye, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, good meeting. Thanks, guys.
Good meeting.
This room is so much bigger without the chargers.
Is that your marked up
We
copy?
put them in their place.
No, I
thank you,
just
Hank.
make a quick note. On the advisory committee, I think
Yes.
we definitely want a builder.
I've been trying. I tried to get Slickland and Dennis Sullivan, and I have not heard back from either of them. Do you know anybody who might be?
Federalists?
I was gonna say there's the Federals. I
they're
know
down the street
Sourdough
from me.
Builders. I could reach out to Peter, who's now the son who's started that. and see
Absolutely.
if Peter
Yeah,
could do it,
yeah,
but
Peter.
I just think we need 10 DOISNEAU. I just think we need somebody who's a local builder to be one of them.
I'll follow back up with both Slickland and Dennis as well. Dennis is not a real. He's prestige builder,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
so he doesn't build from scratch.